Hey humans, welcome. Welcome to Read to Me, Matt Dunn. I'm Matt Dunn, and I'm going to read to you. Today we are reading Pride and Prejudice. I don't hit the eject button on my VCR. Old thing, but damn, it is sturdy. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. We are on chapter 43, part 3. Whoa! Get this. The secret love of your life, which you never knew was the love of your life, but came into your life, and you're like, what? How did they exist? And you're like, this must be meant to be, right? But you don't know it yet. And there they are, standing you in the face, and you're trying to tell them, I love your house, and I know that you proposed to me, and I turned you down. Oh shit. You always lose what you lose. You lose what you got, and you know how life is. Oh, we're all lonely on the inside, aren't we? And we all make mistakes, and it's not a Jane Austen novel if you don't make a mistake and then everything is okay in the end. Well, this ain't a Jane Austen novel, this is real life. But I'm going to read a Jane Austen novel, and I'm going to be mad about it. Here we go. Part 3. Boom! Mrs. Gardiner, not the gardener, who is a guy other than Mrs. Gardiner. Mrs. Gardiner was standing a little behind, and on her pausing, he asked her if she would do him the honor of introducing him to her friends. Oh! He's so sweet and civil. This was a stroke of civility for which she was quite unprepared, and she could hardly suppress a smile at his being now seeking the acquaintance of some of those very people against whom his pride had revolted in his offer to herself. What will be his surprise, thought she, when he knows who they are? He takes them now for people of fashion. This is what she thought, I guess. Loser. She's the loser. I still don't like her. I can not like her, but who knows? Maybe it's the ones you don't like are the ones that you really do like. Deep down, you want them to like you and you want to like them back because you're both the same. Shut up, heart and feelings. I don't need you right now. The introduction, however, was immediately made, and as she named their relationship to herself, she stole a sly look at him to see how he bore it, and was now without the expectation of his decamping as fast as he could from such disgraceful companions. That he was surprised by the connection was evident. He sustained it, however, with fortitude, and so far from going away, turned back with them and entered into conversation with Mr. Gardiner. Elizabeth could not but be pleased, could not but triumph. It was consoling that he should know she had some relations for whom there was no need to blush. She listened most attentively to all that passed between them, and gloried in every expression, every sentence of her uncle, which marked his intelligence, his taste, and his good manners. Elizabeth is like, you see, I'm not so poor after all. I may be ashamed of my real family, but look, I've got family on the uppity ups. Who gives a fuck what you think, right? Well, that's wrong. You're wrong, Elizabeth. You're wrong. You are using your family as tools. Tools in your little equation in your mind to play with people and to woo men of your agreeable league. Ugh. Elizabeth, how dare you? How dare you? The conversation soon turned upon fishing, and she heard Mr. Darcy invite him with the greatest civility to fish there as often as he chose while he continued in the neighborhood, offering at the same time to supply him with fishing tackle, and pointing out those parts of the stream where there was usual most sport. Mrs. Gardiner, who was walking arm in arm with Elizabeth, gave her a look expressive of her wonder. She knows something. Elizabeth said nothing, but it gratified her exceedingly. The compliment must be all for herself. Her astonishment, however, was extreme, and continually was she repeating, why is he so altered? From what can it proceed? It cannot be for me, it cannot be for my sake, that his manner are thus softened. My reproofs at Hunsford could not work such a change as this. It is impossible that he still love me. Elizabeth, let it go. Just let it go. This guy doesn't love you. You're just mistaken. You're crazy. He's just a nice guy. And then you're like, maybe he likes me. Maybe he don't like me. He like me. I shut him down. He likes me some more. So, after walking some time in this way, this is how they walked. Walking this way, hey, and after walking some time this way, the two ladies in front, the two gentlemen behind, on resuming their places, after descending to the brink of the water, this is how they descended, for the better inspection of some curious water plant, there chanced to be a little alteration. Oh, what's this? A little alteration? It originated in Mrs. Gardiner, who, fatigued by the exercise of the morning, found Elizabeth's arm inadequate for her support, and consequently preferred her husband's. Mr. Darcy took her place by her niece, and they walked on together. After a short silence, the lady first spoke. She wished him to know that she had been assured his absence before she came to the place, and accordingly began by observing that his arrival had been most unexpected. For your housekeeper, she added, informed us that you would certainly not be here till tomorrow, and indeed, before we left Bakewell, we understood that you were not immediately expected in the country. He acknowledged the truth of it all, and said that business with his steward had occasioned his coming forward a few hours before the rest of the party with whom he had been traveling. They will join me early tomorrow, he continued, and among them are some who will claim an acquaintance with you, Mr. Bingley and his sisters. Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out of here! Mr. Bingley and his sisters. Those sluts. Oh! Whoo! Elizabeth answered only by a slight bow. Ooh, she kept it cool. She's like, in her mind, she's like, what the fuck? Her thoughts were instantly driven back to the time when Mr. Bingley's name had been last mentioned between them, and if she might judge for his complexion, his mind was not very differently engaged. There is also one other person in the party, he continued after a pause, who more particularly wishes to be known to you. Will you allow me, or do I ask too much to introduce my sister to your acquaintance during your stay at Lambton? Oh my God. This dude talks so much about Elizabeth to his sister that she needs to meet her. This is getting good. Let's get it good. The surprise of such an application was great indeed. It was too great for her to know in what manner she acceded to it. She immediately felt that whatever desire Miss Darcy might have of being acquainted with her must be the work of her brother. And without looking farther, it was satisfactory. It was gratifying to know that his resentment had not made him think really ill of her. They now walked on in silence, each of them deep in thought. Elizabeth was not comfortable. That was impossible. But Elizabeth was not comfortable. That was impossible. But she was flattered and pleased. His wish of introducing his sister to her was a compliment of the highest kind. They soon outstripped the others, and when they had reached the carriage, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner were half a quarter of a mile behind. He then asked her to walk into the house, but she declared herself not tired, and they stood together on the lawn. At such a time, much might have been said, and silence was very awkward. She wanted to talk, but there seemed an embargo on every subject. At last she recollected that she had been traveling, and they talked of Matlock and Dovedale with great perseverance. Yet time and her aunt moved slowly, and her patience and her ideas were nearly worn out before the et-tete was over. On Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner coming up, they were all pressed to go into the house and take some refreshment. But this was declined, and they parted on each side of the utmost politeness. Mr. Darcy handed the ladies into the carriage. When it drove off, Elizabeth saw him walking slowly toward the house. God damn it, Elizabeth, give it to him! Woo! This guy! He's got all this money and nowhere to spend it. He just wants a lovely little lass with a smart mind and a charming ego. The observations of her uncle and aunt now began, and each of them pronounced him to be infinitely superior to anything they have expected. He is perfectly well behaved, polite, and unassuming, said her uncle. But there is something a little stately in him, to be sure, replied her aunt, but it is confined to his air, and not unbecoming. I can now say with the housekeeper that though some people may call him proud, I have seen nothing of it. Excuse me, my bubbly belly. Scooby-Doo! I was never more surprised than by his behavior to us. It was more than civil. It was really attentive, and there was no necessity for such attention. His acquaintance with Elizabeth was very trifling. To be sure, Lizzie, said her aunt, he is not so handsome as Wickham, or rather he has not Wickham's countenance, for his features are perfectly good. But how came you to tell me that he was so disagreeable? Elizabeth excused herself as well as she could, said that she had liked him better when they met at Kent than before, and that she had never seen him so pleasant as this morning. But perhaps he may be a little whimsical in his civilities, replied her uncle. Your great men often are, and therefore I shall not take him at his word about fishing, as he might change his mind another day, and warn me off his grounds. Elizabeth felt that they had entirely mistaken his character, but said nothing. From what we have seen him, continued Mrs. Gardiner, I really should not have thought that he could have behaved in so cruel a way by anybody as he has done by poor Wickham. He has not an ill-natured look. On the contrary, there is something pleasing about his mouth when he speaks, and there is something of dignity in his countenance that would not give one an unfavorable idea of his heart. But to be sure, the good lady who showed us the house did give him a most flaming character. I could hardly help laughing aloud sometimes. He is a liberal master, I suppose, and that in the eye of a servant comprehends every virtue. The husband is sitting next to her. Girl, you can back up off that his mouth shit. Right? Elizabeth here felt herself called on to say something in vindication of his behavior to Wickham, and therefore gave them to understand, in as guarded a manner as she could, that by what she had heard from his relation in Kent, his actions were capable of a very different construction, and that his character was by no means so faulty, nor Wickham's so amiable, as they had been considered in Hertfordshire. In confirmation of this, she related the particulars of all the pecuniary transactions in which they had been connected, without actually naming her authority, but stating it to be such as might be relied on. Mrs. Gardiner was surprised and concerned, but as they were now approaching the scene of her former pleasures, every idea gave way to the charm of recollection, and she was too much engaged in pointing out to her husband all the interesting spots in its environs to think of anything else. Fatigued as she had been by the morning's walk, they had no sooner dined than she set off again in quest of her former acquaintance, and the evening was spent in satisfactions of an intercourse renewed after many years' discountenance. The accountants of the day were too full of interest to leave Elizabeth much attention for any of these new friends, and she could do nothing but think, and think with wonder of Mr. Darcy's civility, and above all of his wishing her to be acquainted with his sister. Really though? Really though? Really though? Really though? Elizabeth, listen. Get your shit together, because you're about to read You're about to meet a real man, Mr. Darcy, and his sister, who's also a man. He just refers to her as sister, because she identifies as a man, a woman. Damn it. You know, you get it. Anyway, if you like this video, please check out some more. I would really like it. Comment down below, tell me what you think. If you think I'm boring and droll, let me know. I appreciate the comments. I've gotten them before and I'm ready for more. But that's tomorrow, right? Anyway, subscribe, write some comments, give me the thumbs up button. I'll see you tomorrow. And do me a favor, be weird. Gooby-doo-boo. Gooba-da-ba-boob.